Welcome to another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Of course, I'm your host, JJ Kitchen. Guys, before we get into the topic of today, a top 15 win for Pitt last night at Acrisure Stadium. Please, as always, subscribe down below, like the content, dislike it, share it with your friends. The amount of people I got to meet last night in the club at Acrisure was so much fun meeting you guys, especially the number of Aliquippa football coaches that were there. In support for Darrell Rivas. Seeing Darrell Rivas, it was a special night, to induct a great player, but more importantly, a great human being into the Pitt Hall of Fame, but more importantly, the W that came with it as well. So again, guys, if you can just subscribe down below, like the content, share it. It's always great, and the channel continues to explode because of you guys. So again, guys, the topic of today, Pitt gets a W, and a big W. You look at Pitt being 1-4 going into this game, an underdog against number 14 Louisville. I can tell you this: it certainly was not perfect. Just like the weather wasn't perfect either, but there were some really good things that you saw in this game that said, "Man, Pitt has a chance to really change the tide from what it looked like in the beginning of the season to now after the bye," which was huge. After the bye, what was this team going to look like? How is it going to move forward? What type of team would we see, especially on offense now with Christian Veilleux, now the quarterback taking over for Phil Dracovic? And we're going to get into it here. But the one thing I think everyone is going to talk about, and more importantly, want to hear about, is Christian Veilleux. Did he have the most spectacular game of any quarterback at Pitt in the past 3 or 4 years? No. But he was a guy that looked 10 times better than Phil Dracovic. I think that was pretty clear. Christian Veilleux on the night, 12 of 26, 200 yards passing, 7.7 yard per average, and 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, but more importantly, no turnovers. And I kind of, we talked about this in the beginning of the year where, you really look at this team a lot differently if you had average quarterback play to start the year. If there was average quarterback play through each and every one of these games, I think we're looking at a different Pitt record, but more importantly, a different Pitt team. But it didn't go that way. But what you saw last night was a guy that, there were plenty of bad throws. But Christian made the throws that needed to be made during critical portions of the game. One thing you saw last night is, looks like Bub Means can be a threat for this team. Exploded, especially too in the passing game in terms of being able to hit some deep shots to Bub Means, Kenny Johnson. Kenny Johnson's going to be a guy that just continues to get better each and every single week. I expect him to be a full-time starter towards the end of the season, because it's going to be hard to keep that guy off the field. He's a guy that just can find the football, but more importantly, when the ball's up in the air, he's going to be able to make those plays. But you also saw, again, Bub Means last night. I think this is the guy who's been really just, hidden, hasn't been able to really produce in terms of, won the passing game because of the quarterback issues, pass pro protection issues. And that was another thing last night. The pass protection was very good, to say the least. But we'll get into that. But you saw a number of good things, in the running game. You saw a different number of guys step up in terms of, let's see here. It had Rodney Hammond. He only had 11 carries, but he had 50 yards rushing on 11 carries. It's 4.5 yards per average. Sebo Flemister had 13 carries for 27 yards, a 2.1 average. Certainly not as high as what Rodney is. Had 2 touchdowns. Sebo Flemister had 2 touchdowns. Personally, I'd like to see Rodney get more carries. I don't know what's going on there in terms of what that's going to look like and why he's not getting more carries and why it's so evenly split right now. Can't figure that out, but hopefully they get Rodney on the field more, because he continually shows he can rush the football really well, and his yards per average is, pretty damn good. But when you look at overall this offense, we talked about the quarterback play needed to get better, but so did the play calling. I still think the play calling was somewhat suspect, especially in terms of the fourth quarter. I think Pitt had 3 drives that lasted, a minute and 45, a minute and 50 seconds, which was, horrible. It's almost like we were predictable. But when you look at what Christian did, he showed up in the times that this team needed him. You saw many different throws in terms of being able to hit the deep ball, being able to get comfortable in the pocket. I think when you look at this game too, the weather certainly played a factor in terms of, hey, how does it look like when he's throwing the football? What does it look like with footwork? I think for what he was able to do was really good. I think this is something you certainly can grow off of because one, it's a top 15 win, a guy that got his first start in college football 2 weeks off a bye. Again, at the end of the game, I was critical. I think it was the right thing to do in terms of, just the offense had to try to find a way to stay on the football field. And it's not just him, it's not just him, it's me pushing it a little bit saying, hey, put Nate Yarnell in, but when you look at it overall, though, a lot of that's on Frank Signetti too, and being so predictable and being so conservative. I was kind of actually shocked to see that fourth down and 1, we go for it, and it's a touchdown pass. And to Kanate Mumfield, who again is a great wide receiver for Pitt. You saw him make a number of good plays. So when you're looking at this from a perspective of, what does this team look like going forward? This is a lot to grow off of. I think Christian, the more and more he gets better, and I think too, I want to see Christian in a setting to where it's actually not, pouring down rain the entire game. That's a major plus. I really want to see what he looks like when it's better suited for the passing game and not just, lackadaisical in terms of what the play calling is because of the weather. But there's a lot to grow off of here. There certainly is. And I think when you look at this team, this was a huge win. The offensive side of the football needed to be better. It was better. But the one thing I really wanted to talk about too was this defense. This defense, man, I'll tell you what, for how much they're on the football field, okay? Obviously, Jack Plummer was 29 of 52, okay? Obviously, 52 times you're passing because when you're down, you can't run. They had issues running the football at times, but still Maurice Turner, 12 carries, 81 yards. I mean, that's still, his longest run was for 30 yards, but he averaged 6.8 yards per carry. But what kind of got them out of that rhythm a little bit was the fact that they were down. And MJ Devonshire, the pick six was so huge. The number of turnovers that we had, even the turnover on downs. You look at this defense and they just continue. They continue to do what they need to do. You look in the second half, from what the first half looked like to the second half. Pitt shuts them out in the second half when the defense is on the field the majority of the time. The amount of plays this defense made. Now, again, does the rush defense need to get better? Yes. There's a lot of plays in terms of tackling need to get better? Yes. But when you have a sloppy game like that, you're going to see that kind of stuff. Those are things that you still have to correct during practice, how you push those guys during practice. But overall, I mean, the defense played lights out. I mean, the amount of, for what they were being asked to do during the game. I mean, Javon McIntyre led the team in tackles with 9 total tackles. Marquez Williams had 7 tackles overall, 6 solo. MJ Devonshire, again, man, I just, 6 tackles overall, 5 individually. Donovan McMillan, again, 5 tackles. I was kind of shocked to see PJ O'Brien get the start at safety. There were some issues over the top early. For me personally, I really want to see Donovan McMillan start playing more. The guy, he's just built for the Narduzzi defense, tough, physical, very fast, a guy that loves to play downhill, especially in this quarter's defense. He's going to be extremely good as the time goes on and he continues to develop in this defense. I think he's going to be a great leader. But it was good to see also, too, P.J. O'Brien make those adjustments as well in the second half to where it was less of a liability, but more he's making plays and getting comfortable back there. But you look at this, the defense overall, just beyond satisfied, man. I mean, it's just good. I mean, Shane Simon with a really good sack that he had there. Obviously, you see here, let's see, Shane Simon, Samuel Okunlola. That was another big play in this game. Jack Plummer, you think he's going to feel the pressure as Samuel Okunlola comes around the corner, gets a strip sack. I mean, just the defense was playing a lot faster. A team that, when you look at this defense, you almost feel bad for them at times because they're on the field so much. They stepped up to the challenge in this game. They played really, really well. The statistics are going to say, well, hey, they give up 80 yards rushing, 81 yards rushing to Maurice Turner. That's not good. Or the Jack Plummer threw for 350 yards. When you're on the field that much, that's going to happen when you throw 52 times a game. Also, too, Jack Plummer threw 1 touchdown pass, but he also had 2 interceptions thrown. Again, it's a good job by the defense by getting off the field, even though they started coming down the field, creating turnovers. That's huge. 2 interceptions. You had a forced fumble. That was huge. Plus the turnover on downs. I think Pat Narduzzi talked about it in his press conference afterwards saying, hey, overall, I think when you count it up with the turnover on downs, it's like 7 turnovers. I mean, that's what you're looking for in this defense. You really wanted to see that progression going forward. But switching back to offense, talk about the O-line, man. You talk about this offensive line, Ryan Bayer, B.J. Williams, Terrence Moore. Those guys, you saw Eno step in a little bit. He was really good as well. I'm just overall collectively, this offensive line, Branson Taylor, this line overall played really well. I mean, this is a Louisville team that faced Notre Dame last week and absolutely just waxed them on national television. Notre Dame gave up 5 sacks. This team gave up 1 sack all game. Collectively, as an offensive line, that's a hell of a job. That's a hell of a job from what it was previously. You come out of the bye week and you look this good. Now it's going to be time to start to really gel. And I think what you're going to start to see too is, Terrence Moore is starting to play really, really well at the center position. I think at this point, when Jake Cradle comes back, you put him at guard. I think Jake is a natural guard to begin with. I just think going forward for this team and this football team, you let Terrence Moore stay at center. Put Jake Cradle at one of the guard positions, and then you'd have across the board, you'd have Branson Taylor on the left side with Jake Cradle, Terrence Moore at center, and then you have B.J. Williams at guard, and then you have Ryan Bayer at right tackle. Those are your 5, and then you got plenty of guys. If you see, Collier, Terrence Enos, those guys that are back there, Blake Subovic when he gets back as well, that's a guy that's there as well. I just think that you look at this team, they're starting to develop that depth. Would you have liked to see, for instance, the offensive line play better early on? Yeah, but guess what? They had numerous injuries. Matt Gonsalves, he's out. Jake Cradle, he's out. Numerous guys that were in and out. But also, too, you would have loved to see the quarterback change early because you see the progression of what Christian Veyer could look like. The statistics don't look great, but I think is the more he plays and we actually get to see him in a game where it's not raining and pouring, how many games we've had, 2 or 3 games this year so far. I know that the Louisville game, North Carolina game, I think there's one more game that we saw a bunch of rain in. This team can really take this energy. And I think after all the bullshit we saw with the blue vase and, the media, pumping up some stuff that, they were talking to a source that wasn't right. And you saw some fans and some Twitter accounts taking it to a point where, this is what rock bottom looks like instead of just trying to dive in and see what it was really about. It took a couple seconds just to ask a question. This team took it, and I think that they really stepped up, man. I think that this team, like I said, is so close. You look at them from an aspect of, hey, this was a 1-4 football team. They came out there, played their ass off, 38-21 collectively all around, plays made all around. No one exactly looked perfect. But when you collectively make those big plays and you make so many of them, even during the game, to where maybe not everything's going your way or not that the game isn't so perfect, but when you make those big plays, it makes a difference. I think this team moving forward really has a shot to really change the tide. You got Wake Forest next week. If you play like you did this week, or even better, I mean, heck, that could be another W. I think Wake Forest obviously is nowhere near as good as Louisville. And by the way, I don't care what anybody says. I saw some Big 12 accounts trying to say that, I think it was a West Virginia fan saying Louisville was a fraud. Louisville absolutely waxed Notre Dame on national television. They were 6-0 for a reason. That's a good football team. Jeff Brom and what he's done there, he's done a hell of a job in terms of what this team looks like. That's a great win for Pitt, man. That's a great win. Physical. It was good to see a number of different guys and younger guys step up. You saw the veteran guys, Bub Means, then you saw Kenny Johnson step up. Then you saw the offensive line step up. Collectively, this was just a really good win for Pitt, man. I think this is where you really grab that momentum. You grab that momentum now and you start pushing it forward where your offense, okay, you're still hindered by your offensive coordinator, which is, hey, it is what it is. Do what you can to get as many wins as possible as where the season is now, because you got some big games coming up. Wake Forest, Notre Dame, Florida State. The stretch here is going to get really tough. The ACC is a tough conference, and we're seeing that. But this is going to be good. This is a really good stepping stone of a game to say, hey, we face a damn good football team. Didn't play perfect, but guess what? Played with good quarterback play, good offensive line play. You saw some mistakes get corrected in the second half by the defense. They shut out a team like this who was a high-powered offense. It's a damn good game. Damn good game, but something you can really build off of. And I think you're really going to start to see that this week now that you just needed that one game that changes the tide. The one game that changes the tide to say, hey, we're no longer on a losing streak anymore. This is where we start winning, and you really have a big motivator. And I think this team is really behind Christian Veyer. I think he's, going to continue to develop. I think he's going to continue to get better. And he keeps playing like this in terms of just getting better, average, and now becoming good and then becoming great. You got your guy for the next 2 years, man. I mean, this is what you wanted to see. Would you like to see it earlier? Of course, you'd love to see, just to a point where you could have saved some of these games, especially this, the Cincinnati game or the West Virginia game where the defense was stout. Hell, the West Virginia game, you saw Pitt only give up, 222, 230 yards of total offense. This team has got talent, and we've been saying that from the beginning. This team has talent. Now it's time to gel it together, really just headstrong, go into this last part of the stretch of this season where you have 6 games left. Really take it by the horns and just figure out what can we do to get as many wins as possible. But this team really showed it. Overall, when you look at this team, that was a hell of a win out there. Hell of a win. I think that everyone saw, hey, it's a W. We're able to be critical of this team, but I'll tell you what, overall, this team needs a lot of props for winning that football game. And I think it's really good to see how well they're starting to gel together, but just how close they are. And I think this coaching staff, and you saw, Pat Narduzzi talk about the blue vase and how it's always been there. And, Branson Taylor talked about how, he went into the game and that there's many blue vases they gave each and every one of the players. He had it in his sock. The blue vase, it can be done. And I tweeted it out the rest of the week, and I'll be tweeting it out the rest of the year. It can be done. This team can do a lot of great stuff if it continues to stick together and just find gritty ways to win these games and just continue to develop as the games and the season goes on, because there are some damn good opportunities going forward. This team doesn't quit, that's for sure. And I hope that the fan base continues to support, but more importantly, continues to show up to help this team and to give it motivation. And also, too, major shout out to the Panther Pit. That weather was horrible last night. Obviously, I was there watching the game. That Panther Pit was something, man. I'll tell you what, out in the rain with the ponchos. Listen, that's what you want to see. Continue to support this team and continue to move forward as this team gets better. This is a huge win for Pitt, 38-21. Guys, as always, thank you for watching the video. Thank you for watching this episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. And of course, guys, please like, subscribe to the channel. Again, the channel continues to grow because of you guys. It was so cool meeting a number of you guys in the club last night, being able to talk to fans about what they like about the show, what can get better, why they like it so much. It was so cool and to have those conversations. So again, thank you guys for supporting the channel. As always, guys, thank you guys for tuning in. And as always and forever, hail to Pitt. I'll talk to you guys later.